All right, joining me now here on the Matthew Filipovich Show is Tia Lessin. Tia is a producer and filmmaker. She was a producer for Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11, Bowling for Columbine, and Capitalism, a Love Story. Along with Carl Deal, she produced and directed the Academy Award-nominated Trouble the Water. Her new documentary is Citizen Koch, which you can find at citizenkoch.com. Tia, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
All right, so Tia, before we get to the content of Citizen Koch itself, many listeners might have actually heard about your documentary because of some controversy with PBS. It was actually brought to light by a piece by Jane Mayer in The New Yorker. Tell us exactly what happened with PBS.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Well, look, Citizen Koch premiered in January at the Sundance Film Festival, and it was on track for public broadcast. We had a commission the year earlier from the Independent Television Service, which is the public agency that funds and curates independent documentaries, and they put on the series Independent Lens. And we were thrilled about that. We were very excited to be showing this film to the largest, audience on free TV. And then something happened. Basically, what Jane Mayer helped us understand was that what were the behind-the-scenes decisions that got made. She reported in her article in The New Yorker that because David Koch, sits on the board of WGBH, the PBS affiliate in Boston, and at that time sat on the board of WNET in New York, and he had also given over $20 million in donations to those affiliates. He wielded some power over at public television, and the executives at those affiliates, and particularly at NET, are sort of in fear of him and his bad reaction. So WNET President Neil Shapiro put an enormous amount of pressure on ITVS because they were hoping for a seven-figure donation, I think, from David Koch. And as a result, ITVS pulled the funding for our film. This was all pretty, shocking to us.
Yeah.
And I guess naively we thought that there would, a funder at PBS would not have this kind of editorial control, but we were wrong.
Yeah, it's that's the whole idea of public funding. It's supposed to be funded by the public, and just the fact that someone, some individual donor could just call the shot and say, hey, I don't want this movie funded, and obviously most progressives are aware of the Koch brothers and stuff, but I don't think most progressives are aware of how much of a hold that the Kochs apparently have over PBS, which is really, really sad.
Well, and in fact, I don't know that even David Koch was aware at that time of this film. He certainly, hopefully, is now. But it's even worse than him picking up the phone. He wields power over there, even when he doesn't know what the content is. The guys, the public television executives, were flipping over backwards to placate him. And one of the ways they did that was removing the funding for our film and removing our public broadcast, chance. So, Look, we think it's censorship in any way you cut it, and we think it's wrong. But we also understand, what public television is up against. They've had so much of their funding threatened by the right-wing extremists like David Koch, and they have to make up their funding deficit through corporate contributions. That's the position they're in. They only get about 15% of their funding from, I think, the government, and unfortunately, those corporate contributions come, with a price tag.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get to the actual film itself, because I've seen clips of it and it looks amazing. How did you guys actually start this documentary? I know a good deal of it takes place in Wisconsin. So how did you guys actually have the idea to do this documentary?
Well, I think it all started when my partner Carl Deal, who is also a producer-director of the film, became addicted to Glenn Beck. He was watching it incessantly, nighttime, daytime, morning, all through the hours. Our TiVo was completely filled up with Glenn Beck rants, and I said, look, you're going to have to either erase this stuff and move on with your life, or we're going to have to make a film about it. And that was sort of the beginning of this. I mean, look, it went back a little earlier than that. We had made a film called Trouble the Water about how the U.S. government abandoned the people of New Orleans after the levees broke. Well, not only after the levees broke, but even beforehand. I mean, the government agencies that were supposed to build those levees and secure funding for public schools and everything, had really failed the people of New Orleans. And we thought after Katrina there was going to be a different national conversation and more support for the government institutions, so that people wouldn't be left behind any longer, and that our social safety net would be shored up, and just the reverse happened. And part of the reason I think that these extremists were taking aim at our public institutions was because there was a profit incentive, and they were looking to privatize services or eliminate them altogether, eliminate regulation over health care and environmental pollution. They had a profit incentive, and people like David and Charles Koch were at the forefront of that. And many people know this now. They were also secretly bankrolling the Tea Party. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the genesis of this film. We were interested in how money, was playing a role in the Tea Party and in politics on the local level. And we headed out to Wisconsin when the uprising there happened, when tens of thousands of maybe 100,000 Wisconsinites occupied their capital in response to Scott Walker's attempts to eliminate public employee unions.
Which was funded by the Koch brothers, actually,
as
well.
Right.
So, yeah.
In 2010, after Citizens United decision was passed, the Koch brothers channeled $1 million to the Republican Governors Association, which is a third-party group that was super empowered by the Citizens United decision, and the Republican Governors Association spent $5 million on Scott Walker to get him elected governor, and the Kochs also personally contributed to Walker's campaign. So, look. Or I'm sorry, not personally, through their PACs.
There's also the famous prank phone call with Koch and Scott Walker, where the guy pretends to be one of the Koch brothers and actually gets to record a talk with Scott Walker, which is pretty hysterical.
Well, yeah, and that's in our film. Look, it was stunning to see how Scott Walker was at the service of one of his billionaire patrons, even if it wasn't actually David Koch on the line. It was clear that he was bragging about eliminating unions, and that this guy, and he was doing a little song and dance for his benefactor. And that's what we're really looking at this film is how money shapes public policy. I think none of your listeners would be surprised to hear that happens, mm-hmm. But I think when you hear the particulars, and also see, look, part of what these guys want is not only to have more power, to have laws that are beneficial to them, but they want to wipe out the other side. They want to eliminate the voices of working people. And so we were looking at Wisconsin as a case study at how union money was what really Scott Walker was after. It wasn't about wages and pensions and a supposed shortfall in the budget. It was really about eliminating the unions in Wisconsin so that the Democrats would no longer be funded by the public employee unions. And so that's what we look at in this film. We look at how money played a role in the Scott Walker recall election. And it's not a happy ending.